Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Anthony Cosenza with the Orange and Black Insider on a very, very special episode of our podcast where we are live talking about the NFL draft, and we are so happy. We have a number of people that are already joining us live. We are so happy to have you with us, and we can't wait. I know I speak for all of us. We can't really wait until the Bengals go on the clock. The pick is made. I'm flying solo for the time being tonight. My partners in crime, Connor Howe and Scott Schulze, will be joining me shortly. They're shoring up some other personal and professional matters that they have to tend to for the time being, but they should be with us shortly. Obviously, as you know, right now, the NFL draft is about ready to kick off, and the Cleveland Browns, for the time being, are on the clock. A lot of indications say that Myles Garrett will be their pick. There's been some rumblings of them taking Mitch Trubisky, the quarterback out of North Carolina, but they do have another pick to work with. I believe it's at number 12 or 13 tonight, and they could potentially maneuver around and do some things there. That being said, there's a lot of different things going on with the Bengals and what they might do with this number 9 pick. There's talk of trades and trade back another pick and, potentially even trade up if a guy slips, that sort of thing. I don't know if I see it. This is a pretty conservative franchise, and I think especially that they hold the rare top 10 pick in the Marvin Lewis era, I tend to think that they stay there. And because of that, and there are needs, but there's not absolute gigantic needs at this moment. I tend to think they kind of see what falls to them at number 9. Obviously, it's going to come down to a couple of different positions. Linebacker, defensive end, wide receiver, maybe even running back are in play at that position, at that draft position. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how the first couple of picks play out. If there is a quarterback or even two that go in the first 8 picks, I personally don't see it, but stranger things have happened, and we'll see if the team ends up taking a player that might not be on someone's radar or many of our radars. Now, there's been a couple of names that have been frequently linked to the Bengals at number 9. One is Alabama linebacker Reuben Foster, and for those who have been following the draft, following the combine, that sort of thing, you would know that Foster has some pretty significant off-field stuff that has recently come to light. He was sent home from the combine before he was even able to work out because he got into a scuffle with a medical assistant there. I don't, the details are a little spotty, but he was kind of getting checked out, and I guess he and the medical assistant got in some sort of spat, and the powers that be decided to send him home. Then earlier this week, you find out that he tested positive at the combine for a diluted urine sample. His agents and representation kind of pulled damage control and said, this is nothing more than a guy who was ill and had to, flush his system with a lot of fluids, that sort of thing, and that's why you had that test. It's not a positive drug test per se, but it's usually a strong indicator that there is some sort of banned substance in the system that causes someone to try and mask their urine sample to do that. So a lot of people believe he failed a drug test. And then also he had off-season shoulder surgery, which has not completely healed. But he's been a frequent mock to the Bengals at number 9. Derek Barnett is another guy that has been frequently mocked to the Bengals, the defensive end out of Tennessee. I think a lot of people feel that he's a good player, potentially not a great one. I look at him and I see a guy that is stout against the run and can get to the quarterback, and I like that. I don't know if the value is there at number 9. So maybe if that's the guy they want, they trade back a couple of spots, maybe even with their heated rivals, the Cleveland Browns, if they want to jump back in and get a quarterback, that sort of thing. And then maybe a guy like Barnett's in play at the 12-13 range, and you get a little better value, get an extra pick. Where I see the Bengals potentially, because Marvin Lewis has said, and when you look at this current Bengals team, yes, they had just 6 wins last year. Yes, there were a lot of deficiencies that came to light in that season. Some of it was because of injuries to stars. Others of it was because they've been so inactive in free agency and other draft classes just have not panned out the way that they had hoped. I still think the Bengals are okay to pretty good at almost every spot this year. I mean, you can look at kicker, and that's they could use a major upgrade there potentially. I think for the time being, most of their starting spots are locked up. So even if these high picks, even if they are exciting players, they may struggle to find the field consistently early on. We'll see. The one wild card, and he's the wild card of the entire draft, it seems, is Joe Mixon, the running back of Oklahoma. The Bengals seem to be very enamored with him from what I've heard. And, it's possible that they look at him at the top of the second round. Maybe if he even falls to the third, that's a possibility. I don't see the team keeping 11 picks personally, just because, like I said, this roster doesn't really have 11 holes really for rookies to come in and fill right away. This isn't a team that has been consistently going 3-13, 5-11, that sort of thing. I mean, this has been a playoff team. They had a bump in the road last year. Yes, they showed some warts, that sort of thing, but I don't know that 11 picks are going to make the roster in 2017. So that's why I tend to think that the Bengals, not necessarily on night one, but maybe on night two, the Bengals move around and, if a guy like Joe Mixon ends up falling closer to back end of the third, that sort of thing, maybe they move back up. It's very rare they do that, but they have the proper ammunition this year to do that. And I think this year should be more about quality over quantity in terms of players, which, maybe in 2011, 2012, when they were kind of rebuilding the team, you'd look more for the plethora of picks and get, some pretty good players all around instead of, maybe 3 or 4 really immediate impact type of guys. Now, I mentioned Barnett, I mentioned Foster. Hassan Reddick is another guy that's recently been coming into conversation. Kind of seems like more of a 3-4 defense. And by the way, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell just took the stage, and he is kicking things off for the NFL draft, the 2017 NFL draft. The Cleveland Browns will be officially on the clock shortly. But the Reddick is a guy, if the Bengals feel they have a need, and a lot of people do, at both outside linebacker and pass rusher, Reddick is a guy that could potentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. Probably needs a little more polishing on the outside linebacker aspect of his game, but does have some skills to play in space. Did do a lot of different things with Temple on their defense, and I think as Temple's not known as a football powerhouse in college, and I think as the weeks have gone on and people have grabbed more tape on him, studied him further, I think people have decided that, hey, this guy is a early to mid first round type of talent and could do a lot of different things for a defense. And with the Bengals, he likely would be a 3-down player, a guy who can play in space for those first 2 downs and then put his hand in the dirt and rush off the edge on a passing down or 3rd down and do a lot of different things for them. He's been kind of a little bit of an en vogue pick for the Bengals of late. And by the way, now the Cleveland Browns are officially on the clock. 9 minutes remain until they make their pick. Reddick is kind of a guy that's a little bit of a wild card. And then recently, John Ross, the wide receiver out of Washington, has entered the conversation. His blazing speed, very productive year last year for Washington. Injury issues are the major concern. Supposedly the Bengals have done their due diligence in terms of medical checks and all of that when they've met with him, and they feel reports have them feeling pretty confident that he is healthy. Earlier today, Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, though, did say that he's hearing rumblings that John Ross could be falling all the way to the late 1st, early 2nd. So if the Bengals don't take him at 9, it's going to be, you're going to have to check out where he might fall. Hearing reports in terms of other AFC North teams, obviously, as I mentioned, the Browns are on the clock. They'll probably look at Myles Garrett here, quarterbacks in play. So probably Myles Garrett and a quarterback is what they'll do night one. I'm hearing rumblings, and this may make a lot of Bengals fans upset, but I'm hearing rumblings that the Ravens are very interested in wide receiver Corey Davis out of Western Michigan. If he was to be there in the middle of the first round when they go on the clock, I think they would look at potentially grabbing him as well. Now, just for tonight, real quick, and I'm going to welcome in one of my co-hosts in just a second. Just for tonight, what we're going to do, we're planning on staying until shortly after the Bengals pick at number 9. We'll talk about the pick, we'll analyze it, and then we're going to let the rest of you go and watch the rest of your draft, and we'll do some work on Cincy Jungle and other platforms. So that's kind of our plan. Now, if there's a trade up, a trade back, we may have to adjust on the fly. If it's a significant trade back, I don't know that we'll be doing a 3 or 4 hour show, folks. I apologize about that. Regardless, we're very happy that you're joining us live. We've got a lot of people joining us live, and we are very excited about that. It's the first time we're doing this for this show. The show has been in existence, closing in on a year. So, maybe if you guys like this and you're interested in hearing our thoughts while watching the NFL draft, watching us, all of that, maybe we'll make this a regular occurrence. But I am joined by Connor Howell, my partner in crime, my West Coast buddy. He has been doing some work for SB Nation's mother site as well as Cincy Jungle and other things. Connor, the Cleveland Browns are officially on the clock. They've got about 6 minutes left on their pick. I kind of real quickly went through some of the needs of the Bengals, some of the players that have been frequently mocked to them at number 9, especially lately. What are you looking for? I think just to kind of start off with the Browns, I think we can agree probably Myles Garrett's the pick here.
Yeah, I mean, I think his agent confirmed it. So, and I mean, I think all that whole hype of they were going to take, Trubisky was kind of fabricated. Well, not fabricated, but it was just hype. I don't really think it was ever really going to, actually become a thing.
Yeah, and before we kind of get to more of the Bengals stuff, you and I and Scott as well, we talk about how we know enough to be dangerous about the NFL draft. We watch some film. We know a good amount of players and know a bit about a lot of the prospects this year. This year, to me, though, seems very tricky. This year seems like it's there's similar talent between maybe pick 7, pick 8, all the way to maybe pick 20 in terms of value. There's a lot of question as to, aside from Garrett, as you mentioned, where players might go in terms of, our team's going to trade. And because of this perceived equal value of players, this year's a little tricky. Would you agree with that?
Sorry, what was that?
Would you agree with the fact that this year is a little trickier than most because of the perceived equal value of players in the middle of this first round?
I don't know. I think it's a good narrative at that. Does it actually mean anything? I guess we'll see. I don't know. I've been a strong preacher of the fact that groupthink is has way too much of a factor in terms of it molds the way people look at players. You look at Bengals fans in particular, and they loved Derek Barnett a couple months ago. Then they all jumped on the Reuben Foster hype train. Then they all fell in love with Corey Davis, and now they're in love with John Ross. And the first one, Derek Barnett, it seemed like Jason Markham. Oh, the pick is in for the Browns, by the way.
Correct.
It seemed like Jason Markham, who on Cincy Jungle with us, was kind of the first person to start that hype train when he mocked them to the Bengals in what I remember as being the first Bengals mock draft. I don't remember who started the whole Reuben Foster hype train, but you look at Corey Davis and obviously Joe Goodberry. People love what he has to say, and it seems like he started that whole hype train with Corey Davis. And then as soon as Davis is it looks like the Bengals are going to go Ross, so Goodberry changes his pick to Ross, and then all of a sudden, all of the Bengals fans switch their desired player to Ross. All of that being said, I think it just goes to show that everything that anyone says just gets taken, and people always say, "I'm going to take something with a grain of salt," and they never actually seem to actually do that. So to answer your question, I don't know. I think it's kind of yes and no. I think right now, as we see, it looks like the board is pretty even from the ninth or so pick to the end of the first round. But is that really true? I mean, we'll see. Every pick is a gamble, and just because mock drafters see the board one way, that doesn't mean teams see it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. And obviously, the Bengals front office is the one that's making these decisions. So it's kind of up to them, obviously. They're the decision makers. And the Cleveland Browns have officially gone with Myles Garrett, the defensive end out of Texas A&M. Beast of a player, very good player. Obviously one that the Bengals will probably need to be reckoning with over the next handful of years at the bare minimum. And I say bare minimum with Scott Schulte potentially joining us, and it looks like he's got some teddy bear in a Bengals uniform or something. Scott, how are you?
Good. I am still kind of getting set up, so I have a stand-in for me for the time being.
All right. Well, we'll let you get set up. I know we started a little earlier than we normally do, but we appreciate you joining us again. If you are joining our live draft show just now, the Cleveland Browns have selected Myles Garrett as expected with the number 1 overall pick. Now, this is when things start to get interesting, though, because there are a number of players the Bengals, especially on defense, a number of players the Bengals could be targeting, whether it's Solomon Thomas of Stanford, Jonathan Allen of Alabama, that could fall in this range, the San Francisco, Chicago, Carolina type of range. But at the same time, one of these guys might slip. Some people tend to think it's Jonathan Allen over Solomon Thomas that might slip. Connor, how much have you watched of Allen and Thomas? I personally, I like both of them. I don't know if I'm in love with them, and I know a lot of people are in love with especially Thomas. Do you have a preference between the two?
Between Solomon Thomas, Jonathan Allen. I don't know. I mean, do I think the Bengals would take either one with the 9th pick? I really don't know. They both kind of seem kind of like similar players, but just from a different skill set. You have Allen, who's a little more built in terms of like bulk and figures to play inside more. But then you see Solomon Thomas, and it looks like, oh, the Bears just trade up, I think. Wow. Wait, I don't know. Never mind. So maybe it was something I saw wrong. But
they
Thomas
did.
And Allen.
They moved up.
Wow. They moved. That is crazy. The Bears just moved up.
So usually, just for the listeners, usually on our live show, we have at least a little bit of a script that we work on in terms of topics and all of that. Tonight is about going through the craziness of the draft, obviously interacting with all of you in the chat room and on Cincy Jungle that are joining us. So we appreciate that. But the Bears have apparently leapfrogged the not 49ers. And it's probably it looks like indications are they might go with Solomon Thomas as you were hinting at. But continue your thoughts on both of those players there.
I think that, when you look at Thomas and Allen, they both seem kind of similar. And I'm not like a big film guy, so I'm not going to pretend like I know all of the details about stuff like this. But it's just they both seem like kind of similar players. And I don't know if that's what the Bengals are looking for. A guy who, in theory, if he's the guy you want, is going to be the guy that's playing D-end on base downs or when they're in base packages on early downs, and then kick inside to the nickel or into defensive tackle and nickel packages. And, people who love Thomas will say that's what Thomas does well. He plays base end on early downs and then kicks inside and plays well in nickel defensive tackle. His detractors will cite, people talk about Malik McDowell not having a good work ethic, but people say Solomon Thomas has a worse work ethic, that he misses a lot of plays. They also would probably, it's both of those guys just kind of seem like tweeners, I think, in the eyes of NFL teams.
Yeah.
And Draft Twitter definitely doesn't think either one, but they definitely are a lot more high on Solomon Thomas. But I think both those guys could be effective for the Bengals. It's every player that's going to go high is going to has the potential to be a good player. It's just a matter of where he ends up, what's coaching staff he's with, the players around him, the scheme, and whether all of that lines up in a good way. I think both those guys are really talented players, and there's really not much else that needs to be said. They're both at a position where the Bengals could definitely use help. People are going to nitpick. People are going to criticize, Solomon Thomas's work ethic. People are going to criticize, Jonathan Allen's lack of perceived athleticism, despite, the fact that both these players are super accomplished and super talented and could probably be great players in the NFL under the right circumstances. So, would they fit with the Bengals? I think so.
Yeah, and again, the Bears just traded. They were at number 3 and they moved up a spot with the 49ers to what seems like they might be getting Solomon Thomas, a fan favorite of a lot of Bengals fans. I'm going to say this about Thomas, and I've never I wasn't a fan of the fact that really in the January months, all of that, and granted, January and April are two very different stories when it comes to players because a lot of things play out in that process, but he was looked at as a second or third round type of player, a good guy, a good player, a guy that kind of had a very good bowl game, and good player. All of a sudden, people kind of fell in love with him. I watched some tape on him and some highlight films, that sort of thing. What I saw from him, I saw a very good player against the run, by the way, very good player against the run. What I saw, though, when it came time to getting to the quarterback, most of the sacks that I saw were missed blocks, nothing more than chipped blocks, or he just wasn't blocked. So somehow, now maybe that's a great thing, great scheming by Stanford in terms of getting him into a position where he can have easy one-on-ones. That worries me a little bit at the NFL level. You're not going to always get an absolute turnstile to get to the quarterback. But at the same time, if you were to come to the Bengals, you look at it and you go, okay, well, he would be playing on a line with Michael Johnson, Geno Atkins, and Carlos Dunlap, and you mix and match there, and he could potentially get many one-on-one chances with Geno Atkins getting double teams, Dunlap getting double teams. So it would make sense from that point, and the versatility. I do love the versatility, and I do think he's a guy, obviously, as I said, that plays well against the run, which is what they covet out of their defensive linemen, especially their edge players. They like to make sure they maintain their lanes and all of that. So the pick is in for the Bears. We're waiting for the announcement here. But again, we're second pick in of the 2017 NFL draft, and we've got a little bit of a shocker, whereas there's already a trade. So the Bears get the second overall pick. Obviously, they swap picks with the 49ers, so 49ers are on the clock next. They get the Niners get a third and fourth round pick in 2017, and then they get a 2018 third round pick, it looks like, for this trade. So pretty good haul for the 49ers. And if you think about it, here's the selection right here real quick. Oh, my gosh, they took Mitch Trubisky.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. I was a little worried about the dead air there, but I think it set up the drama very nicely. Mitch Trubisky, the first quarterback off the board out of North Carolina, a trade. The Bears trade up one spot to get him, give up basically 3 mid-round picks over the next 2 years to do so. Trubisky, great year last year, but kind of a one-year wonder. Some people thought he might be the guy that Cleveland would move up to get with that second first-round pick they have at number 12 overall. He's off the board. Number 2 overall, Mitch Trubisky. So Solomon Thomas is still on the board for the time being.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, I to be honest, when I heard they traded up, my first instinct was they're probably taking a quarter. I mean, I don't know. Something inside of me was like they're gonna trade up for Trubisky, or a quarterback in general because I don't know. What position are you really gonna trade up one pick and unload multiple mid round picks? Just to acquire a guy like that. And I think that's a big, it kind of shows what separates teams like the Bengals and teams like the Bears, because Marvin Lewis, and people are going to criticize him for it, but the Bengals treat draft picks so like they value them so highly that they're not like, they just spend an entire offseason accumulating, or like the past year or two, they've been accumulating picks. And to just unload all of those, I mean, it'd be like what the Bears just gave up to move up one spot in the order is probably what like the Bengals probably got this offseason for losing Zeitler and Whitworth. It's a big deal that they just gave up those two picks, especially to take a quarterback who, after they just signed, Mike Glennon. So, I mean, I think that when you look at what the Bengals do, and also that's good news for the Bengals because it's another quarterback, maybe Thomas or Allen or whoever your favorite defensive lineman, front seven player, wide receiver, whatever, or running back could fall to pick 9. That's huge for the Bengals, but I think it just goes to show that they value so highly having a lot of picks, because when you give up all of those picks, I mean, the Bears have to nail this pick because John Fox and Ryan Pace are not going to survive if Trubisky doesn't succeed almost immediately.
Right, and how long have the Bears been looking for a long-term answer at quarterback? I mean, it seems like forever. And even when they went to the Super Bowl, they had Rex Grossman under center about 10 years ago. I mean, they've kind of just patched together. They had a couple of okay to pretty good years with Jay Cutler, but that ended up blowing up in their face. They, as you said, they traded for Mike Glennon this year. I think they brought in was it Mark Sanchez also on their team there too?
So they signed Glennon and Sanchez in free agency.
Excuse me, signed Glennon. They didn't trade for him. So those, I mean, they have those two guys. Granted, neither of those guys really blow your hair back in terms of long-term viability. And by the way, Mark, I love you, buddy. I know I love you, buddy. But neither one of those guys in terms of long-term viability really blow your hair back. And it's kind of a shocker. So now San Francisco's on the clock. On one hand, this would be a team that would make a lot of sense for a Jonathan Allen, a Solomon Thomas, but you look at their last couple of first-round picks. They drafted the two big defensive linemen out of Oregon in back-to-back years, DeForest Buckner, and I can't remember the other gentleman.
Eric Armstead. Off
the top of my head. Eric Armstead, thank you. So they drafted those guys in back-to-back years. So I don't know if that means, and Thomas kind of fits that hybrid, as you talked about, Connor, that hybrid 3-4, 4-3 type of guy who could do a lot of different things. So maybe that's the pick here. Maybe Jonathan Allen is the pick here. There's some talk that even Leonard Fournette might be in play here, so they have that dual running back combo with Carlos Hyde and Fournette in the backfield, which might make things easier for another unsettled quarterback situation in San Francisco. They've got about 3.5 minutes now on the clock. Obviously, when you look at the YouTube chat, people are laughing about they're laughing at the Bears, essentially. Dr. 8-Bit, LOL, Bears just saved a QB's career from being a Brown. That's a good one. Tom Brooks says, wow, they gave a lot up. Chris Dill, short and to the point, LOL. Royal Flush 513, LOL, good job, San Fran. And then obviously other people are saying, they hope that more quarterbacks come off the board so that some of these good defensive linemen wide receivers, that sort of thing, could potentially fall in the Bengals' lap. Again, you're watching the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, a special edition of the show. Usually we record on Wednesday nights and disseminate all of the audio and video to you throughout the week. Obviously, this being draft week, we thought it best to maybe do a live show, especially with the Bengals holding a top 10 pick, and which is coming very soon here. The 49ers, the pick is apparently in, so we'll wait on that. But yeah, interesting. 2 picks in, and it's already getting pretty interesting. I'm Anthony Cosenza, for those of you who might be tuning into this show for the first time, a contributor at Cincy Jungle, as well as one of the co-hosts for this show. Connor Howe, who is also an SB Nation and Cincy Jungle contributor, is one of my co-hosts with us tonight. Scott Schulze and his teddy bear pal are with us as well tonight. He is a Cincy Jungle contributor and a co-host on this show. Thanks for tuning in live. We've got a lot of people viewing, and we are very happy about that. Kind of a unique way to spend a draft evening, I guess. And we're very glad. We pride ourselves on being interactive with our listeners and the readers on Cincy Jungle. So we are very excited to have all of you with us tonight. We were not truly anticipating a Bengals trade up or back. I think at this point, especially with the unexpected move by the Bears to trade to number 2 and get a quarterback, I think that kind of shakes things up and allows the Bengals then to kind of see what falls to them at number 9. So we expect to kind of see the Bengals come through at number 9. I've got an interesting comment left to us on the Cincy Jungle comment thread. I'm going to get to it in just a second because Commissioner Goodell is going to the podium to announce the San Francisco 49ers selection. It's probably just a small handful of players that they might be narrowing it down to, and they have settled on Solomon Thomas, the defensive end from Stanford. So, Bengals fans who wanted Solomon Thomas, that's out the window. Sorry. But, kudos. And here's the thing. I both love what the Niners did and I don't like it. So I love it because I don't think the Niners were ever in play for Mitch Trubisky. I don't think that was in their cards there. So if Thomas was the guy they wanted all along, which very well could be the case, given that he played college ball right down the way from San Francisco.
Yeah, John Lynch is a big Stanford guy too.
Yes, John Lynch is a big Stanford guy. That is a great point. And it seems to make sense for them. They traded back, they got extra picks, and they got a guy that they probably wanted all along. Now, the thing that, and again, this is a Bengals show, but just talking about this pick, I don't know. We mentioned the Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner picks. Either they're going to have an absolutely silly defensive line and have plans for all 3 of those guys, or maybe 2 of those other mammoth guys they had drafted over the past couple of years might be moving on. Scott, it looks like you have taken place for your other mini co-host that was standing in for you. How are you, sir?
Yes, doing good. He took a break, so I'm taking over for a little bit.
Yeah, he's taking a smoke and coffee.
I find it kind of interesting with the whole Trubisky pick, because you kind of figured when they traded up to number 2, someone was going after him. And you kind of wonder, with the Browns, did they really want him and just not give a good offer? Or do you think I don't know if that was a smoke and mirrors to try to get someone else to trade up?
I don't know, and that's going to be a good lead in. Again, I'm trying to get to this interesting comment/question on the Cincy Jungle comment thread, but the Jaguars sprinted to the podium right after the 49ers picked Solomon Thomas. No.
Okay.
Don't. My guess is this is either this could be Leonard Fournette. This could be man, it's not going to be an offensive lineman. So they might grab a safety, one of the good safeties. I don't know. We'll see here in just a second. While we're waiting, and Scott, this is we're waiting to hear from the commissioner on this pick. I don't think anybody expected them to go this fast up to the podium. WF Stott on the Cincy Jungle comment thread said Cleveland now needs to trade with us McCarron for number 12 or number 33, either QB Chris Hogan or wide receiver Josh Gordon. Now here's the thing. That seems like a total. In theory, that seems like a Madden trade, and you're kind of like, oh, this isn't realistic. But maybe the Bengals might be open if Cleveland offers them. Supposedly, the Bengals want a first-round pick of some kind for AJ McCarron. Now, whether the next year's one or something like that remains to be seen. That remains to be seen, even if a team looks at it and says, we won't give you a first, but we'll package some mid-round picks, a second, whatever. So, again, that kind of sounds like a little bit of a dream scenario. But now Mitch Trubisky, probably the quarterback that the Browns wanted, to your point, Scott, is off the board. Maybe the phones are ringing.
They could be. I would just be very surprised if someone gave us that much for him, because didn't they used to use a third-round pick on Kessler last year? And I can't imagine them giving up on Kessler so quickly, especially when McCarron's not exactly an elite. And I know Bengals fans like to think he's a lot better than I think he actually is. And I just can't imagine a team giving us a number one pick, especially a bad team like the Browns, who are probably going to have a high number one pick next year. So they're probably going to be in a good position to have to draft a quarterback. So I can't imagine them giving that up just for McCarron, who may or may not have 1 year left on his contract. So it'd be a dream scenario. I think it'd be very unrealistic.
I agree. I do think there will be calls for, especially depending on how the rest of the first round plays out with quarterbacks and all of that. They'll probably be receiving calls about AJ McCarron throughout the weekend. If they truly want a first round pick for AJ McCarron, I don't know that that's realistic. I mean, I guess they're kind of comparing it to the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Jimmy Garoppolo was a higher draft pick and had some better tape in NFL games than AJ McCarron, but I don't see that they'd be getting that. By the way, the Jaguars took Leonard Fournette, the running back, out of LSU, so he is no longer in play for the Bengals. If they were considering him, Scott, you had a thought there.
Everyone's celebrating.
I just want to say, I think the only way we get a first round pick for McCarron is if it's someone like a Saints, who's a low first round pick, like 25 to 30, someone like that who's looking for a long-term solution, a replacement for Drew Brees. They're in the SEC. He's kind of maybe a more of an interesting appeal to a team down there, kind of where he's from, down in the southeastern parts. I could see a team like that giving us first round. I couldn't see a bad team giving us first round pick.
Yeah, if a first round pick were to be offered, I don't think it's a 2017 first round pick. I think it's probably something in 2018 where a team can maybe leverage that, and I don't see that other teams hold the same value that the Bengals do with McCarron.
There's no way anyone trades a first rounder for AJ McCarron after like a 3-game sample size and something like that.
Right. I do think he probably could start somewhere. How effective he could be, I don't know. Probably like other quarterbacks in the league, he would probably need a somewhat strong supporting cast. Maybe a team like a Houston Texans or something like that might make sense. Even if the Browns give the best offer on the table for him, I don't see the Bengals trading him in the division. Do you, Scott?
No, I mean, if the price was there, I just don't see anyone in the division giving us that price. I don't see the Browns giving up that much. They need a quarterback, but I think they probably know they're bad enough. They're going to have a high enough pick to get a really good one. The Steelers are never going to give us a first-round pick, even though Ben's getting older. And I don't see Baltimore giving say, first-round pick. I mean, yeah, it'd be great. And I'm not really sure who would give us much because you look at, I mean, I think the Bears were really smart what they did. I mean, you sign someone like Glennon who has experience. He's kind of your stopgap. You have him in place, and then you draft Trubisky, who can sit there for a year or so because he's kind of raw. He can learn the NFL, and then when it's his turn, he can step in and take over. They can get rid of Glennon. So a team that's smart, that's doing something like that, wouldn't give us much for McCarron, and I don't see anyone else giving us much for McCarron because he possibly is last year. I guess no one really knows. But you're not going to give a high pick for a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of time left unless you can do like one of these sign and trade things where, hey, we'll extend him for a few years and then trade. I mean, even then, I can't imagine getting a first rounder.
Yeah. Austin Tran in the YouTube chat says, I'm scared that the Bengals are going to take a cornerback that we don't even need.
They're not going to take a cornerback.
I don't know that that's – I don't believe – the only way they would have done that is if Adam Jones was shown the door.
If anything, they're going to take one next year because it's an every other year type of thing.
Now, if Jamal Adams was there, I know we don't need a safety. I would run to the podium myself. I would run all the way to Philly and put his name in.
So I hear you, and I like the player. I think he's and by all accounts, not only is he great on the field, he's a great locker room guy, team captain, really rallies the troops kind of guy. My thing is, you just paid two safeties very good money last year. So where does that fit in? Sean Williams signed a contract extension and it ended up playing well towards the end of the year. George Aloka had a solid year as well. I mean, I guess it's good to have another contingency plan, but is that what you really want out of number 9? And if Adams is going to start, then you kind of wasted money on one of those two guys last year.
Well, and only some of that money is guaranteed. And I figure, in my opinion, and granted, I'm no Mike Mayock or David, whatever, Daniel Jeremiah. Personally, I think Adams is the best guy in the draft. And if he's there at 9, I think there's no way you pass on him. And, okay, you sign Sean Williams. Okay, you have a pricey backup or you cut him and you move on.
Well, I think right now the Tennessee Titans, by the way, are on the clock. They've got just over a minute left. I think they're trying to get out of this spot. And unfortunately for them, Mitch Trubisky was taken earlier than a lot of people thought. And one of their major trade partners, the Cleveland Browns, probably wouldn't want to trade up to get a quarterback. So I think they're doing what they can to try and trade out of this pick. That's why they're taking it to the wire. They could, if not, they might go wide receiver or secondary. This might be where you see a Jamal Adams come off the board. Potentially one of the Ohio State defensive backs there that could be coming off the board here. So
Lattimore. I haven't seen any leaks. I think it's going to be Lattimore.
Okay. Like I said, they're going down to the wire, and all of a sudden the Bengals pick is almost right around the corner. We're coming up on pick 6 here. You like that tongue-in-cheek reference. The pick is in now. I guess the Titans held on to their pick, and they're gonna do that. I think we all can kind of agree. I think whether it's on offense or defense, one of the skill positions, corner, safety, or wide receiver is probably in play here. They might even surprise people. Maybe go an O.J. Howard. That could be an option for him. But for right now, I think they'll probably go.
I'm not gonna say it. You guys are gonna be pissed though, I think.
Okay.
The only way I'd be pissed if it's Joe Mixon.
No, he's not going to go.
They need DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, and Joe Mixon.
Maybe they went John Ross.
That'd be all. I'd be very. I would have no complaints. There's 3 good receivers. I'd rather take the best available than reach for one.
Well, they're not going to go running back because they have DeMarco Murray and
Henry.
Yeah, Derrick Henry. Yeah,
Derrick Henry.
So we're waiting for the pick here.
It's
This
not quarterback.
one's interesting. No, it's not quarterback. Marcus Mariota had a good year last year. I am tending based on Connor's. What's that?
Well, that is the good thing is that, with Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, there's a chance that we could trade down depending on how the next 4 or 5 picks go. And teams start wanting that second tier quarterbacks.
Yeah. Oh, wow. They went Corey Davis. So Corey Davis is off the board. And the first receiver off the board, Corey Davis. Now, many people, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, by the way, rocking a rad salmon jacket right there. Gotta love the cojones to rock that thing. The first wide receiver off the board. He comes from a small school, very talented. There were some concerns about a lack of workout numbers and everything to go on, but the Tennessee Titans wanted a weapon to help Marcus Mariota, one of the guys that, at least for a little while, was linked to the Bengals. I don't know that if he was at number 9, if they would have sprung for him. Who knows? But he is off the board. Opinions kind of vary on this kid, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, is he good or is he great?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Titans luck, dude. Titans luck. You have Kendall Wright. Who's the other receiver that they took high? Man, I don't know. I hope he turns out well. The Titans being pretty. I mean, the Titans. They're such a boring team. I really don't.
Dorial Green Beckham.
Well, that guy, but no, it was Kendall Wright. Oh man, he's so forgettable. But. Oh, I don't even know. I'll look it up. But the Titans, I mean, I wanted to say it'd be fun for them to be relevant, but I really don't care. It's the Titans. Maybe if they're good, I'll actually care sometime. But, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it'll be more fun for sure. But, like, did their offense need another receiver? Yeah, actually probably. I don't know. I think him and Mariota will be fun. DeMarco Murray, they have an exciting offense. I don't know how good their defense is. I don't kind of remember, but they went 9-7 last year, so they could be good.
Yeah. Supa Soul in the YouTube chat says, "Dang, that's who I was hoping for." Austin Tran once again said, "Haha, they got a C." I guess as a grade. I guess. So I think this is going to bring mixed opinions. Some people think he is the best receiver in this draft. I think if you ask Mike Mayock, I think his top guy is still Clemson's Mike Williams, with John Ross not far behind.
The other receiver was what's his name? Justin Hunter. That's who it was.
Justin Hunter. Yeah. Okay. So, I personally speaking, I think he would have been a good complement to AJ Green. I like the size, I like the speed, but we still don't really actually know what the true speed is. You see it on film. There's no tangible numbers that we have to go on there, but good player to the Titans. The Jets are on the board, and like the Cleveland Browns, like the Chicago Bears, the Jets cannot figure out the quarterback position. If you figured Trubisky was the top guy in this year's draft, he's now gone. Obviously, he went to number 2 to the Bears, and now, the Jets, might they look at Deshaun Watson? Is that way too early? I don't know. But they've got about 4.5 minutes on the clock, and they might go secondary here. There was a joke early
I got a breaking rumor. Cleveland is trying to trade for Kirk Cousins. Cleveland Browns trying to trade for Kirk Cousins.
Wow. Now that's interesting. That is, and who is that courtesy of?
Ian Rappaport.
Besides you.
Ian Rappaport. Okay.
So, breaking rumor from Ian Rappaport, courtesy of the Orange and Black Insider. The Browns are looking at Kirk Cousins. That is interesting. They might have been, again, they might have been knocking on the door for the Bengals and looking at. They might. I don't know how I feel about that. We'll see if they can strike one. That is very interesting, though. That is very interesting. Seeing Kirk Cousins to the Browns would be very. It's so funny how teams have all this time in the offseason to work trades, work things, talk, and all of a sudden it has to be on Thursday night. It has to be the first night of the draft that all these teams wheel and deal and do all this stuff. Maybe it just comes to light on a night like this, and it's been going on for a while, but it almost seems, Scott, like teams are taking advantage of this chaos and almost panic mode that teams get into, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, you have all the time procrastinating, or you're kind of looking at everything, and then, when, your feet are put to the fire, you kind of have to do something. And
yeah, that's good, yeah.
I do like the 10-minute format instead of the 15, because I think it forces teams to act a little quicker and maybe screw up, maybe make some silly trades, but it is, like you said, you have months to decide what are all your scenarios, and then, okay, you're on the clock. You got 10 minutes. You got to do something. Yeah. You mentioned quarterback. So, I think it's got to be Jamal Adams, just because he's that good. And they just drafted Hackenberg last year, I think, and Petty the year before.
Yeah. They can't take a QB in the first round. There's no way they do that.
Right. They still haven't had it settled. They haven't had it settled for a long time. So, and by the way, prepare. If you're watching the telecast, whether it's on ESPN or NFL Network, prepare for Jets fans to boo probably whoever this pick is, because that is what they do. But they've got a little under 2 minutes. We are coming up on the Bengals' number 9 pick. It's interesting, Scott. There was a joke. I was kind of trying to get to it before that last pick came in there. There was a joke about in the YouTube chat about, I hope not another first-round corner. Well, all of a sudden, value-wise, you have two first-round corners and actually 2 first-round safeties, top 10 potential picks, and another top 10 corner that are falling to the Bengals' way as they come to number 9 here. Now, I probably expect the pick is in for the Jets. This could be O.J. Howard. But this might be a secondary player. They lost Darrelle Revis in the offseason, so they might go a corner here. But some interesting names are starting to fall. And one other one on defense for the defensive line, Jonathan Allen, is still available currently, barring the Jets potentially making a move for him here. But, Scott, you might get your wish here.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way on God's blue earth he falls to 9, but if he did, that'd be pretty awesome. And even if he doesn't, you mentioned the other safety, I assume Malik Hooker, which is a very interesting one, because he's kind of a raw guy, and he's not a guy you need to start right away. I mean, he just has insane upside, but not the highest floor. So it'd be interesting. Okay, you have the 2 safeties signed. If you think he's that good, would you draft someone like him?
Yeah, I have a good friend who is a 49ers fan, and he was talking about how the Niners might take a safety at number 2, and he was, I was saying Jamal Adams or Malik Hooker, and he actually preferred Hooker over Adams simply because the comparisons there are Earl Thomas, Edry. He's more of a ball hawk type of guy. Adams is more of a do-it-all. He can cover quite a bit, but he's also more of an in-the-box guy. But, it kind of depends on your taste there, If you kind of want the Bob Sanders, Earl Thomas, Ed Reed type of mold where they kind of roam and freelance a bit, maybe Hooker's the guy that's better for you. Otherwise, I think if you want a more polished product, Jamal Adams, who just got drafted by the Jets, by the way, at number 6 overall, Jamal Adams, he's a bit more polished and well-rounded probably than Hooker, but both guys seem to have pretty high ceilings.
I don't know. The tape I've seen of Hooker, well, I guess Adams is, there's no reason to think about him anymore. At least not for 5 years.
Well,
we make a huge free agency signing and sign him, which is what we do.
Yeah, exactly. Good player, though. Good player. And obviously LSU is known for their defense. They, this year, obviously, they also, last couple of years, they've also been known for Leonard Fournette. But He's physical. He can kind of he does a lot of things pretty well from what I've seen, and he's also got a lot of leadership qualities and all of that, which is what you want out of a player like that. And if you've got a safety that could do a lot of things pretty well, that's a good sign for them. And I think at number 6, that's good value for the Jets. There, you normally don't like to take safeties that high, but with a weak QB class, a weak offensive tackle class, I don't know. I think then that's kind of bumped up a little bit, the safeties a little bit, and not so much known as a premium position. The Chargers are on the clock. They've got a
super rare.
It is
that high. I think they have. I don't think there's been a safety picked in the top 10. I could be wrong. Since the year Eric Berry got picked in the top 10, Earl Thomas I think went 12. But I mean, it makes sense. But I don't know. It's the Jets. They take defensive backs and they never work out. I think D. Milliner, who was at safety, Calvin Pryor, and now I mean, I don't know. Hopefully for their sake.
Calvin Pryor went to the Jets, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think Calvin Pryor went. Yeah. Again, this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. We're doing a draft special live show tonight. You're with Anthony Cosenza, myself, Scott Schulze, and Connor Howe. All of us are co-hosts on this show, and we are contributors to SB Nation and Cincy Jungle. We are so happy to have you with us. We've got a lot of people watching, especially now that the Bengals are coming up on their pick. To me, and it's going to be interesting to see Connor's reaction here, because Connor, although is a Bengals fan, he is a Chargers homer as well. Maybe not so much anymore since they left San Diego.
Oh, I'm still kind of a Charger guy. I mean, they're one of my teams. I have teams that I like. I think the Bengals are top of my list, but I mean, Chargers. I like them. I like the Bucks. I kind of like the NFC. There's divisions I like. I like the NFC South. Yeah, and NFC North a little bit, but definitely still like the Chargers. Yeah.
Well, they're on the clock. They've got about 5 minutes left, and to me, this is going to be one of the most intriguing picks of the top 10, aside from the Bengals, of course, for our own purposes.
I say it's Hooker. I don't know who it is, but I think it's Hooker.
I would not disagree with that. I think that's definitely a possibility. And then you have, I believe, the Panthers right in front of the Bengals at number 8. And a lot of people think Christian McCaffrey might be the guy there. We'll see if that ends up being the case or not. But the other guy still kind of in play is Jonathan Allen. Might he be a guy that the Chargers look at? Might Reuben Foster be a guy they look at? I think Manti Te'o went and signed somewhere else this year. Maybe they want more of another inside linebacker presence there. He could be on their radar. They might also be talking about trading this pick. I don't know. Connor, you probably have a better pulse on it than I do, being that you have a little closer ties to them than I do. But might they be open to a trade if a good deal is on the table? And they don't really are. I mean, the guys that have gone in front of them, do you see any of those that they were really enamored with that they wanted at 7?
I mean, I don't know. I think that the Hooker's kind of been the guy that's been tied to them for a while. They could, I don't think they will, take McCaffrey. I think that's a long shot. I think receiver would be a luxury for them, but I just saw a Schefter rumor that was kind of insinuating there'd be a run on receivers. So I could see a Mike Williams, maybe a John. I don't know about John Ross because the Chargers can't stay healthy, and I don't see the point of taking a receiver that can't stay healthy, or at least hasn't been able to up to this point. But all that being said, I think it's going to be Hooker. I don't think Foster. I mean, they have even though they lost Te'o didn't even play for them last year, and they had one of the better inside linebacking corps in the league. They took the Ohio State guy Joshua Garnett, I think, last year with the third rounder, but they already had Denzel Perryman as well, and they had Jatavis Brown, a 5th rounder last year, who was one of the best rookies in the league. Also have Corey Toomer, who they picked up off waivers, who made some plays, most notably on the Thursday night game against the Broncos that they ended up winning in the game that kind of saved Mike McCoy's season. But I think for the Chargers, yeah, they're kind of like the Bengals. They don't really have any, glaring needs. Even at safety, they have, they just extended one of their 2 safeties, and the other guy just signed a 2 or 3 year deal. Oh gosh, I see the pick. So I'll just say I saw one of the positions we've talked about was a position that they've selected. I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're on certain platforms, unfortunately the picks kind of come in a little earlier than others. But I think, like you said, the Malik Hooker pick makes a lot of sense because they lost Weddle a couple of years ago, and they might need that type of player. This one to me is kind of a wild card. I think this pick really will probably define what the Bengals might do at number 9. So as weird as that sounds, it's mostly because it depends on the position they take and who's left on the board there. You mentioned a potential run on wide receivers. That could definitely be coming with the Bengals being linked to John Ross. I will say this about the Chargers. I remember the days when they had Malcolm Floyd and Vincent Jackson together. They like those big pass catchers, and I think Phillip Rivers is comfortable with those types of receivers. So maybe a Mike Williams, a go up and high point the ball type of guy instead of the speedy option. John Ross might be the pick here. Scott, I'll get to you in just a second. The Chargers pick is in. The commissioner is at the podium, and the Chargers select Mike Williams. Wow. I was just talking about him.
It makes sense. Because if you think about it, they have Keenan Allen, hasn't stayed healthy. They signed Travis Benjamin last year. They have Tyrell Williams, who had a superstar year last year. But Allen and Travis Benjamin really haven't been able to stay healthy. Williams is a nice red zone threat, which will mitigate, Antonio Gates' kind of decline and eventual retirement at some point in the future.
Yep. I think it's a good pick. To me, this is my favorite receiver in the draft. Whether you think he fits the Bengals or not, this is my favorite receiver in the draft. Played huge in big games. He did have a neck injury that really scares me, but physical. Actually ran better than I thought he would for his size. But I got to pat myself on the back. I was just talking about big receivers for the Chargers and how they like them. They like the physical guys, and how this pick could potentially shape the number 9 pick for the Bengals. Now, Scott, all of a sudden, in the first 7 picks, 2 wide receivers are off the board. We talked about how defensive end and maybe Derek Barnett being the third or fourth best edge rusher in this class is their value at number 9. Now we talk about receiver and John Ross. If he's your number 3 receiver in this class, is that true value at number 9? Even if that's the most apparent need.
If you think he's the 9th best guy, he is. I just don't think he's the 9th best guy. I think he was the clear number 3, and I think their teams obviously felt that way too by taking Davis and Williams ahead of him. But the one thing I do like is that this means that with only 1 pick ahead of us, unless we trade down, either Malik Hooker or Jonathan Allen is going to be there. And I know a lot of mock drafts running up to today had both of them gone. So it would be interesting if one or both of them are still there, especially if Carolina goes with McCaffrey. I don't know if they're both there. If we pass on them both and reach for someone like O.J. Howard or what we'd do at that point.
O.J. Howard O.J. Howard would be an interesting one.
Carolina doesn't need their tight end.
Yeah.
And it's probably a little early for Zane.
What's that?
I was saying it's probably a little early to grab Zane Gonzalez.
No, it's no. He's not wrong. I mean, in terms of that being one of the biggest needs. So the Carolina. Okay, wow. The Bengals are basically on the clock right now. The Panthers didn't take all of their 10 minutes. They took 5 minutes. This could be Christian McCaffrey. This could be an offensive lineman, though this is a very weak class for that. This could be, like you said, maybe O.J. Howard, Greg Olson's getting up there in age. Maybe that is where they go. They do like defense. They do have a stacked defensive front, so I don't know if Jonathan Allen is their guy here. My guess is it's probably either Christian McCaffrey, maybe Malik Hooker, and it leaves the Bengals some very interesting options on the board. Jonathan Allen, John Ross, Derek Barnett, Reuben Foster, probably still in play, O.J. Howard, depending on what this pick is here. But the pick is in. The Bengals are essentially on the clock. And by the way, fellas, regardless of if you're watching ESPN or NFL Network, you can take it to the bank that there will be a commercial break when the Bengals are on there, because they do that every single year. The networks cut to commercial right around when the Bengals are set to announce their pick. This one's going to be interesting. A lot of people do think it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. And it looks like, is this Thomas Howard that's maybe announcing the pick for them? I don't know who this is. Anyways, the Bengals are essentially on the clock, like I said. So we'll see who this is, and then we can cut down to who's left on the board.
And then we'll take our commercial too.
Yep.
Just one thing I'll say before we make our pick. We talked about Jonathan Allen being there, and this is the guy Connor had mentioned, I think, in our last podcast. But I would be just as happy waiting and grabbing Malik McDowell. I think he's every bit as good as Allen is. So I don't know.
Connor likes him. Connor likes him. The issue with him is a question of effort and motor. The size and everything is there. That could go if they do go McDowell. And here's the Panthers selection here. Christian McCaffrey, yeah, the running back out of Stanford. So good to me. This is a good fit for Carolina, running the read option and getting doing some things that they can do with Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey. There's size concerns with Christian McCaffrey, but I recently did a phone interview with ESPN Lexington and was asked about him, and he's got some of the quickest feet I have ever seen in a running back prospect, especially recently. Very quick, very shifty. And you can do a lot of different things with him. So I think that's what plays into Carolina's strengths for the offense here. Now, the Bengals have a lot of different options. Go ahead.
I was going to say, who do you guys want right now at 9? We're on the clock. I'll give you guys a list of names. I have the SB Nation list pulled up. Okay, so best available: Jonathan Allen, Malik Hooker, Marshawn Lattimore, Dalvin Cook, Reuben Foster, O.J. Howard, Derek Barnett, Deshaun Watson. Probably one of those guys. Maybe not the quarterback.
I don't know.
I tend to think Allen.
I tend to think
Watson. Trade down.
Yeah, yeah. I tend to think part of me has been on the offensive skill position side, whether it's Howard or Ross here. I think this pick probably comes down to those two. I think Allen is definitely in the discussion. I don't know if they believe that he would be here. I think this team needs more offensive explosiveness. If the good news is if they don't go with one of those skill positions here, there's still probably going to be some very good options at the top of round 2, whether it's running back or wide receiver. But I tend to think that the Bengals need some skill positions, especially given the lack of points they put up on the board. What do you think, Scott?
I'm just a big believer in best player available. I think we have enough. I mean, you look at the Patriots, outside of Tom Brady, they weren't really – I mean, Gronkowski, he was hurt. They weren't really oozing with tons of offensive weapons. I mean, the running backs were a bunch of cast-offs. So I think if the line's good enough and you have a great quarterback, you can probably get away with just, whatever. So I just want the best player, and I'm afraid it's not going to be who I think the best player is.
Give me Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen, best available.
That's if this were any other year, and I think the Bengals were looking, what they've done recently is, hey, we're picking in the teens or the 20s, and let's get the best guy out there. I think Jonathan Allen would be a shoo-in for this pick. I'm just not sure if that's going to be the case with the needs that they have on offense. I don't think that I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words at the moment because I don't know what this team is thinking. Jeff Hobson had him taking O.J. Howard. Dave Lapham had him taking John Ross. But Lapham, who has been very reliable, Scott, you wrote a piece on this a little bit for Cincy Jungle. Lapham has been very, very reliable recently with predicting Bengals picks. And it's you mentioned he said I think Denard. I know he said Eifert when no one was pegging them to take Eifert.
I think he mentioned Zeitler after the trade, so it's in the middle of the draft. He mentioned Obuehi. There were a couple other guys, but I have to wonder: was Ross, based on the fact that that they were thinking maybe some of his guys would be gone? I mean, who would have thought Billy Cooker and Allen would still be there, and Lattimore?
Yeah, not exactly how a lot of people. So there's people in the YouTube chat saying they should trade back. They did not do that. They stuck with the pick. And guys, at least if you're watching ESPN, they didn't go to commercial. I lost that bet. Oh my gosh. But what they did do is they are now talking to Christian McCaffrey as the Bengals are going to the podium. So take that as you will. But very, very interesting to see what the team will do here. They did not trade back with some of the guys off the board. And you said the best available, some of the best available guys really don't seem to be big needs for the Bengals. But, we've seen stranger things. Gut feeling, Scott, what do you have?
My gut feeling, I think it's not going to be who I want. So either I think they're going to reach. Well, I don't think they're going to reach for one of the linebackers. I'm going to say they grab Howard.
You're going to say
O.J. Howard.
Okay.
If I were in Vegas, I'd say that. And I'm not breaking out any champagne or confetti if they do.
I saw the pick, and I'll say that I think they reached. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, here we go. We're waiting for the Bengals pick. It is in, and we'll see what it is here. Again, wide receiver, tight end, and defensive line, even linebacker seem to be on the board here for the team. A lot of good secondary positions available, but I don't see that being the pick here. Unless they're truly going best player available. We'll see.
I will ask this
we have the commissioner coming to the podium here. And they took John Ross, the receiver from Washington. And Scott is disgusted with himself. I'm getting a little audio issues on my end. Are you guys hearing okay, or is it scratchy on your end?
No, I hear you.
I can hear
everything. I kind of wish I could hear the last thing you said, but I hear you.
All right, I have a friend who's a big Washington fan. Just tweeted at me, "You're gonna love Caps Lock Ross." Hope so. I don't hate the pick. I really wanted to hate the pick. I mean, he's a good player. It's just a matter of whether or not he's gonna stay healthy, and the Bengals seem to think he is. So let's hope he does. I don't know. What do you think, Scott? You there, Scott?
Did we lose Anthony?
I think so, yeah. What do you think, though? What do you think about Ross?
As long as we end up with McDowell or Mixon in the second round, I'm okay if we reach for Ross.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, he's a good player. He's a really, he had a lot of, I think the production, there's a trade, too. Chiefs just trade up. But, oh, man, actually, Scott, I need to leave you to talk. I forgot to do I have to do something really quick for work.
Okay, so I guess it's just one of us until Connor's back and Anthony's back. The pick, it's hard to argue to say it's a horrible pick. He obviously had a lot of production. The 4.22 40 is something rather absurd that no one has ever done before. And you watch his film, he is a lot better than just like a straight line guy. He's not a Will Fuller with the bad hands. He's not a Darius Hayward-Bay. He is someone who runs many routes. He runs good routes. He can do more than just run deep. He is a good receiver. I think some of the things we've highlighted in the previous podcasts as far as how the other guys were better at making the difficult catches, the contested catches, which are the things that Ross doesn't do as well, I think make him not as desirable as you would want, because with a top 10 pick, you probably want a true number one receiver, a Calvin Johnson, a Larry Fitzgerald, and not a complimentary guy. But he's a good complimentary guy. I don't know. Do you agree, Anthony? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I apologize. What a great time for the audio to get scratchy for me there, but I left for a second. Now it's clear. I apologize. But so the Bengals at pick number 9 went John Ross, the wide receiver out of Washington. We'll analyze this pick and go from there here. I think you guys gave both of your first impressions of the player. Here's my thing. Love the speed. Love the speed. Love the production from last year. And I love the idea of a guy that if you have a healthy AJ Green, you have Tyler Eifert, you have Tyler Boyd out there, even Brandon LaFell, then you can take the top off with a guy like Ross. And if you even noticed early in the year when Green and Eifert we're healthy and out there, or middle of the year, I guess, when they were both out there and healthy, other guys were having trouble getting open. And that was because coverage was bracketed to those guys. And though they still made a lot of plays, they had a lot of coverage floating their way. And it just makes sense to add that speed dimension. And when you saw this offense with Eifert, Green, and Marvin Jones together, it makes sense. My issue, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts about it, how's he going to get on the field initially? I guess with a top 10 pick, you would think that, okay, we're going to play this guy immediately. But as we all know, the Bengals and Marvin Lewis don't always do that. They re-signed Brandon LaFell to a pretty big contract. As we mentioned, they drafted Boyd in the second round last year. So how does he get on the field, Scott?
I think this first year he probably doesn't. They just don't play offensive rookies a whole lot. I know we've talked about this in the past. I think the defensive rookies, they tend to play a little more unless they get hurt. The offensive ones, actually, it really depends. The skill position. We saw what Tyler Eifert did his rookie year, and afterwards Gruden said he was underutilized. Last year, Tyler Boyd really didn't see a whole lot of action until Green got hurt, and even then it was hit and miss. I think this first year we don't see him. He maybe gets 2-3 touches a game for 20, 30, 40 yards a game, and maybe breaks a couple long ones. And at the end of the day, we're kind of like, well, hopefully he does more next year.
Yep.
I'll put this way. He's not a draft for my fantasy team.
You would not.
Correct.
Okay.
Not for 2017.
Okay. Connor, the Bengals seem to channel their inner Al Davis and went for the speed, the fastest guy in the draft, the fastest guy to ever run a 40 at the combine. Your thoughts on him being productive in this offense, and also, and I want to hear from Scott on this too, but your thoughts on the injury concerns with him. Obviously, there were some reports earlier on that the Bengals were very comfortable with the idea of him being healthy and past these issues. He had a knee issue. I think he had a shoulder issue, that sort of thing. Is that cause for concern?
We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. I definitely didn't trust that report that the Bengals gave him. You know, a clean bill of health was the quote. I didn't like that phrasing. Bill of health. Okay, dude. I mean, get off your high horse there. But I think that you look at the pick, and I saw a comment in the YouTube chat room from Cliff, which I definitely agree with. And I was trying to talk myself into this before the draft, which is that one pick doesn't make or break a draft, because you look, and the second round is probably, in my opinion, really going to be the bigger round of emphasis in the first round, because I think, like Scott said, you want to get that running back or that defensive end there. That's really the position of need. The Bengals, I mean, must not have either valued the position high enough to take it in the first round, or believe they probably didn't think that any of the guys there were worth the first round pick. And you know, John Ross, his numbers, if you look at him from a number standpoint, sure, you can probably make the argument you could take him in the top 10. Do I think he's worth the top 10? No. But I think the defensive end, whoever they end up taking highest, is absolutely going to be, or if they take a running back high, whoever that player happens to be is going to be the most impactful player. And, I mean, as I've preached all offseason, I'm really just trying to talk myself into this at this point, that the 10 picks after this pick are probably going to collectively have or maybe even individually have a bigger impact than the first overall pick. I mean, now the Bengals, in theory, on offense could be awesome if, you know, everyone stays healthy, but this could really come back to bite them if John Ross isn't healthy.
If he's not healthy, yes. And the reason I asked that injury concern question, I think it's especially pertinent to the Bengals and their medical staff, given all the mess ups they've made with other players that they've brought in the past, and or how they've handled injuries. It got better for a few years, but I mean, you even saw some things where players believed that they were ready to go last year, and they still made the call. Not William Jackson III was not recalled from IR return. Cedric Pierman was. And then you have AJ Green, who was chomping at the bit to get out there when the Bengals were still theoretically alive for the playoffs. Even though he had that hamstring pull, you know, if he missed maybe 2-3 games, went back out there, obviously there's a risk of him injuring it further, but they kept him out for 6 games, and he reportedly was not happy with that. But here's the deal. And by the way, the Kansas City Chiefs did a little shocker here. They traded up and got Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback out of Texas Tech. Very exciting player. So he is the second guy off the board, not Deshaun Watson in terms of quarterbacks. Scott, do you see – I want to ask you about the injury thing too, so talk about that. But do you see Ross playing a potential role like Andrew Hawkins did when he was with the Bengals? Even though Andrew Hawkins was kind of their third, fourth wide receiver, he had the speed, the shiftiness where they could do a lot of swing passes, a lot of yards after catch stuff, even some stuff out of the backfield. Do you see Ross potentially, even though he might be down the pecking order, a third, fourth wide receiver on this team, do you see him being a guy like Hawkins where they create creative plays for him?
I guess it depends on if we think their offensive coordinator is going to show growth from year 1 to year 2. I think there was a lot of complaining, and rightfully so. I mean, last year was his first year, and he seemed to struggle with play calling and the plays in general. So you have to hope that he's able to do something like that. I think the one difference is, even though Ross has the blazing speed, I'm not sure he is the kind of crazy pinball that Andrew Hawkins was, who just kind of bounced back and forth on some of those plays and made guys look silly. So I think you have to look at maybe besides the deep balls, the wide receiver screens, some things like that where you're trying to find a way to get him in space where he can maybe get a little head of steam and get up to his 4.22 speed and then just fly past everyone. I mean, he has some shiftiness, but he's definitely not one of these elite, crazy bounce back and forth kind of guys that he isn't Barry Sanders.
Right.
And then you have to kind of hope, like he said, he has to stay healthy. I mean, they drafted a boy who he was hurt. They drafted, obviously Jackson wasn't hurt when they drafted him, but they drafted a guy last year who got hurt in the first round. The year before they drafted a guy intentionally who was hurt. And then this year they draft a guy who has been hurt pretty much his whole college career, coming off multiple surgeries. And so you just have to wonder what is the attraction or what value do they see in drafting all these hurt people?
Well, I'm going to say this with Ross, really his first 2 years were a wash. 16 catches, 208 yards, a touchdown in 2013, 2014, 17 catches, 371 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Missed 2015 essentially. And then I will say this, for a guy that was supposedly battling a lot of injuries last year, he still played 14 games, including the bowl game they had against Alabama in the playoff there. Now, I obviously that points to a fact that though he might have been dealing with some stuff last year in terms of injuries, he still played. Now, last year, insane numbers, 81 catches, 1,150 yards, 14.2 yards per catch, which surprises me a little bit. I thought it would have been a little higher just thinking about the plays he made. But 17 touchdown catches, 8 rushes, 102 yards, and a touchdown there. So, I mean, there is also what he was used for in his first 2 years. There's some punt and kickoff return abilities there. He returned a lot of kicks throughout his career. He has 4 kickoff returns for touchdowns. Might this be writing on the wall, Connor, for Alex Erickson?
I mean, I hope not. I don't know. I mean, I hope whoever wins. I think that John Ross, I mean, if you just took him in the first round, the Bengals took Gio in the second round and didn't want to put him in the kick return duties because they want him to stay healthy. I hope Alex Erickson stays on return. I hope the Bengals, when they have so many picks and they have so many players competing for spots, that they have one guy to stick to, returner duties, and I hope that would be Erickson. Whether or not that, maybe Ross breaks off another, but I mean, Erickson, like we kind of hyped him up on Cincy Jungle last year. I mean, he was one of the best in terms of yards per return, kickoff returners in the league. And sure, there are guys like John Ross who is an exciting name. He's a first round pick. He has that speed, but does that mean? If you already have an effective returner and you want your receiver to stay healthy, you keep the receiver healthy, and even if that means sacrificing a yard or two additional yards per return. But I don't know. This pick just has me thinking, man, because the Bengals for so long have been criticized for letting people walk in the offseason, and now I think you look and Tyler Boyd versus John Ross. I think, I don't know. I think they might have to choose between one or the other at some point in the future. I guess we'll see, but I don't know, man. My mind just goes to dark places considering the past season we had, all the attrition we've all talked about for so long. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the Bengals' heads right now, but I don't know. I don't love it and I don't hate it.
I'll tell you what's going through their minds right now, and it was painfully apparent last year, is that they need to get younger and faster on both sides of the ball. And whether it was Carlos Dansby at linebacker, some of the guys on the defensive line, or the receivers they've lost and guys they've tried to fill that in with, Boyd and LaFell aren't burners. I really like Tyler Boyd. I think he's a good chain mover type of player. And LaFell had a good year stepping in for A.J. Green, but obviously not a long-term solution there. So I think obviously the long-term solution here is to have a trio of Green, Ross, and Boyd. And to me, those are 3 pretty good receivers. Now, again, you look at number 9 and you say, you need to have an immediate impact guy. I worry about how many touches this guy is going to get a game, how many opportunities he's going to get in a game. Maybe the idea is, even though they paid Brandon LaFell decent money, maybe he then goes down the pecking order and Ross starts. I don't know. But in recent weeks, the buzz has been the Bengals have been all over this guy, and they wanted to get fast. And obviously in a division now that has a lot of good defenses, Cleveland just added Myles Garrett. Pittsburgh is always stout. And obviously Baltimore is Baltimore. Scoring points is at a premium, and a guy that can command attention, whether it's with the ball in his hands or getting attention away from their other passing options, I think makes sense. I do understand, like you, Connor, I do understand the hesitation here. So before we kind of get to our grades and our overall thoughts of this pick, and then we'll get out of here, looking at the YouTube chat, we kind of have some mixed emotions. We might need to talk some people off the ledge here. Aaron Beckett wrote no Ross and did an emoji with a face with a gun pointed to its head. We have Peter Neefus says if it's Ross, that would help the offensive line. Supa Soul likes the pick. Tom Brooks face palm. Aaron Beckett, well, I'm changing the channel, shaking my head. Rat Salad, WTF. Greg, not safe for work language here. No. And then other people say he sucks, all that kind of stuff. So obviously some mixed emotions. Some people like him, some people don't like him at number 9. Again, this is a draft. We talked about this at the onset of the show. This is a draft where you can get somewhat equivalent talent in picks 8 through 20 in terms of value. So backed a couple of spots and grabbed a guy. Maybe they should have gone with best player available. But, Scott, we've also seen sometimes the best player available, when they don't have a need and they get these guys, they still sit on the bench and don't get playing time. And then now, I mean, we look at a guy like Darqueze Dennard. He's now towards the end of his rookie contract, and he has yet to start or really make an impact on this team. And he was kind of a luxury pick at the time, just kind of a best player available. So I don't know. Does that kind of change your mindset a little bit on this?
Well, I mean, that kind of makes me think of this pick. I mean, this pick, you could argue, was probably a luxury pick in the sense that you already have guys lined up at the receiver position, and going into camp, Ross is probably your 4th wide receiver, whereas someone like a Jonathan Allen should be able to push Michael Johnson for a starting role, for example. Or you look at what the Chiefs did right after our pick, how they traded down and got into the mid-late 20s, which is, all the experts going in the draft, and a lot of the teams were kind of saying the heart of this draft was probably at 15 to 35 range. And, the guys you're going to get from, 5 through 15, there's really no value there. So you want to trade down. What the Bengals do, they stay put, grab the 3rd wide receiver. What the Chiefs do, wonderful move, or sorry, not Chiefs, the Bills, trade down, get great value, let another team reach for a guy in that top 10. And you kind of wonder, were the Bengals offered that? And did they just decide, no, this guy is so good in our mind, we're going to, or did they, or what? I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think they really value the speed. They like the skill set, but I also think they saw what happened to this offense after they lost both Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones last year, and it just wasn't the same. And granted, there was an offensive coordinator change, and that didn't help matters. But now they kind of have their little trio back again. That really exciting trio that got them to that was a really, really awesome offense in 2015, where they had Sanu, Jones, Green, Eifert. And now they kind of have that brewing again. And for that reason, I think it kind of makes sense. I don't know.
I think the other thing, though, back then, okay, you have a guy that can run deep routes, but is Dalton going to have time to throw a deep pass to this guy this year?
So that's the other question, obviously. And unfortunately, whether your thoughts on guard, tackle, and needs there, the value just wasn't there. Some people like Forrest Lamp, a guy who could play guard or right tackle. The Bengals are committed to Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher this year, and obviously think they have a stopgap with Andre Smith. They re-signed for a year also. So, that's just how it is, whether you like it or not. That's what they've decided to do, and the value wasn't there for offensive lineman at number 9. They decided that speed and athleticism is going to win the day. So, Connor,
Browns just traded down to the Texans. Wow.
Texans might be looking at a quarterback here.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They might be.
All these teams are trading down.
Yeah, they might be looking at a quarterback here. Connor, one of the things that could remedy the potential offensive line issues this year, and why Ross fits into the scheme of the Bengals. Yeah, you envision him flying down the sideline and catching the 80-yard bombs, but he's also a yards after the catch guy. And this offense might be predicated this year on quick hitting plays to get athletic guys like AJ Green, John Ross, and Eifert, all these guys to get yards after the catch plays. Is that something that kind of quells your fears a little bit? Get the ball out quick, get him a slant, and let him work through defenders and outrun them potentially. Does that kind of quell the fears about the value of this pick for you?
I mean, for me, it was never really about value. It was just about what the Bengals mindset was in taking a receiver this high. I mean, you took AJ Green with the 4th pick, and you're taking Ross with the 9th pick. So that's a pretty high standard there for a guy like Ross. Marvin, I think it's worth mentioning what Marvin Lewis has said. Jeff Hobson's kind of live tweeting all of this right now. He said only 2 drafted wide receivers in Bengals history have ever been under 6 feet tall. Marvin Lewis said when you play against him, you feel his speed. They got no calls on clock. So they got no calls about trading down. Once a quarterback was taken at 2, it created a different dynamic. Marvin Lewis did say Ross is a candidate to return kicks. He said Ross should be ready around the start of the season after shoulder surgery. He said one thing that impressed him about watching Ross was playing corner early in his career. He said James Urban, the receivers coach, said there's a legitimate comparison to Deshaun Jackson. Offensive coordinator Ken Zampese says Ross is a technician when it comes to routes, no wasted motion. The Bengals really do like their guys to be able to run routes. And do I think? I mean, in terms of value, I guess I can see it. Like I said, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I kind of wanted myself to hate the pick, but I can't because he's not a bad. Like it's not like they're taking a bad player. It's just when you look at the team building, and I wish my dream. It was. I mean, I didn't get my dream, but I think you look at what the team is doing, and it makes sense. I didn't like that it fit the narrative that the national media was going with, and that the Bengals need X, Y, and Z, when it really didn't feel to me like they did. But they have the speed, so now we'll see really if this narrative was overplayed or not.
Yeah, and like I said, I just think they want to get younger, faster. I do worry about the injury stuff, but like you said, I think Deshaun Jackson is probably this guy's ceiling, and I think that's an apropos comparison. I think especially if he can do the occasional punt return, kick return, and get his hands on the ball there. The Bengals. Here's my thing: the Bengals can't be afraid.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Is Deshaun if Deshaun Jackson's a ceiling, is he worth the 10 pick?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
To me. And especially because this kid has a much better head on his shoulders than Deshaun Jackson. If you remember, Deshaun Jackson was a guy that slipped, I think, to the top of the second round, though he was thought of as maybe a late first-round talent. But there were some concerns there, and I think this kid's character, from all indications, is high. I think that he's the fastest guy to ever run a 40 at the combine. Now, you can take that with a grain of salt if you want, but chances are he is one of, if not the fastest straight line guy in the NFL currently. I mean, that's just how it is. Now, my point though is, and I think actually, if you were to look back at that draft, you would probably say, well, given Deshaun Jackson his handful of playoff berths, number of 1,000-yard seasons, exciting plays on special teams, if the Bengals were to use that, get a guy like that to be a complimentary guy to AJ Green, yeah, why not? Why not? Stack the offense, score some points, and then I think these middle rounds will probably see a running back, and then we'll probably see a run of defensive linemen and linebackers. That's what I think. We'll get to that before we get out of here. Scott, your grade on the pick and your kind of immediate reaction. I mean, I know we've talked about it at length so far, but your grade on this pick as we sit here today and envisioning what Ross might be able to do for the offense.
I'd say as far as his ability, I mean, he is a good route runner. He obviously plays extremely fast, and he's more than just a track guy. And what he can bring to the offense, I'd say, I mean, it's obviously his fit. Adding him is good. I'd say that has to be a A- or B+. But I'm a huge value person. And as far as where he fell versus where his grade should be versus who is available that they passed on, versus, looking at some of the air factors going in, I find it very hard to give it. And I'm very cynical, I guess, because I have a hard time giving it better than a C+, just because I think that he's a good player. I just don't see the value there at that number 9 overall pick.
Okay, fair enough. And by the way, guys, the Bengals play the Houston Texans this year, and they just drafted Deshaun Watson, national championship winning quarterback. They traded up to do so. They traded up quite a bit to do so, to pick him at number 12 overall. So some very interesting stuff happening with the back end of the draft with some perennial playoff teams, the Chiefs, the Texans, moving up and getting quarterbacks of the future there. And obviously I would think Watson is a day one starter for them. I don't think Mahomes for the Chiefs. I think that's a year or two to develop before they let him start. But regardless, the Bengals play the Texans, and they might be seeing Deshaun Watson this year. He just went at number 12. Connor, your grade on the pick as we sit here today, just about 15, 20 minutes after it was made.
I think with a little bit of time to think about it, to adjust, to meditate on this pick, I will give it a B. I think the question of whether or not Deshaun Jackson at his peak is really worth the 9 pick is a legitimate question. I think that the medical issues, whether or not he actually is able to stay healthy, is something that will just not be able to escape me until he plays through an entire season healthy. And, I hope that he does. I hope that I'm wrong. I mean, I don't think that it's a bad pick. Like I said, I give it a B. I mean, it's not like I think it's a terrible pick. They could have done a lot worse. But am I excited about it? Not necessarily. It's kind of a meh pick for me. That's my initial reaction. I'm kind of there right now, too.
Okay. I'm going to give it a B+, maybe even bordering A-. I feel like I've been in an island in terms of prospects I like, prospects I don't, positions of need for the Bengals this year, in terms of fan opinion and all of that. But I think wide receiver was a big need. I do. And I think a guy who can stretch the field is a big need. And maybe this is a little bit of a makeup call for them waiting last year and seeing like 4 or 5 receivers they probably wanted go right in front of them and getting leapfrogged by other teams. Maybe they wanted a Will Fuller. Maybe they wanted Corey Coleman, these speedy guys to complement AJ Green, and they sat on their hands and they didn't get them. So, I guess if you look at it as they could have traded up and sacrificed a pick last year, and they didn't do that, and they've got the guys that they have in their arsenal from the 2016 class, and maybe they took Ross a tiny bit higher than many would like this year. I think it makes sense, and I think it's a long-term thing. I don't think it's going to be an immediate thing, but I do think, and this is my worry, I worry about creativity of the Bengals and their coaching staff and being able and willing and able to get Ross on the field, get the ball in his hands, design plays for him, especially early on. I don't know how that's going to play out, but I like the fact that they're addressing their skill positions. I mean, obviously there's other needs there, linebacker, edge rusher, all of that. They did invest, albeit in, what seems to be limited resources in Wallace Gilberry and Chris Smith, in terms of free agency and a trade to kind of have rotational guys. So maybe they think they can get by with those types of players this year and not really have to invest a high pick on an edge rusher. There are some injury concerns as well with Jonathan Allen. I think he has a shoulder issue or something like that as well. So that's what's causing him to slip a little bit. So, maybe that's what's going on there. I don't know, but I like the pick. I'm not absolutely in love with it. I think, to me, Mike Williams was my guy in this draft in terms of a wide receiver. I liked him. He went 2 picks ahead of them to the Chargers. They can't really help that unless they wanted to trade up, but that was my guy. I had Ross as my number 2 guy. I liked Corey Davis. I didn't really love him as much as others, but still a very good player there as well. So I had him as the number 2 wide receiver, and for that respect, you get the number 2 wide out at number 9, and it's a need. I like it. Not totally enamored, but I like it. And, we'll see how it plays out. Before we get out of here, guys, my favorite night of the draft, as it currently is set up, is night number 2, because I think you can get a lot of very, very good players who could have or should have been first-round picks, but because of character concerns, injuries, maybe oversight, just, teams, as we saw tonight, teams are moving up and grabbing quarterbacks. Maybe that's the reason that some of these guys slipped to the second round, and the Bengals sitting at the top of the second round, and then an early pick in the third round, they could get 2 more very good players this year. So, Scott, where do you see the Bengals maybe leaning for the next 2 picks? Might they still go offense, or do you think it's going to be defensive heavy now that they invested that high pick at number 9?
I think it's really going to be probably best player available. I don't think they will be there, but if someone like Taco Charlton, Chris Harris, Derek Barnett, if one of those, Malik McDowell, if one of those guys was there, I would assume them, or I know Joe Mixon has been in discussion. So I think it just really depends on who's sitting there. I don't think they're looking maybe position specific. That being said, if we end up with either Malik McDowell or Joe Mixon tomorrow, I will be much happier with this pick, because right now I feel like it was kind of a punch in the gut, and either tomorrow they're going to stomp on my head while I'm laying down, or they're going to pick me up and pat me on the back and say, hey, we're sorry about that.
Well, like I said, it's my favorite night. I think that's truly where you get the value in rounds 2 and 3, in my opinion. Maybe even round 4, you can get some. I mean, last year the Bengals in round 4, so many people were so up in arms on the first night that they didn't go with Andrew Billings, and they got him on the 3rd day. So, I think they could get some good players there. Go ahead.
I'll also say there were now granted in the 90s, every first-round pick they made, I just felt was the worst thing ever, suffering through some horrible drafts, and where you're like, what is this thinking? And not just in hindsight, but when they happen. The David Klinglers, the Akili Smith, we had passed up the whole entire Saints draft, and just some of these other absurd, trading down and grabbing Chris Perry in the modern era. Do you remember
who was taken right in front of him?
Of which one? The Perry pick?
Yes.
I don't remember who was. I know Jackson, but I don't remember who was after Jackson. I don't remember who was that 25th pick.
Steven Jackson is who I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Because I think it was Jackson, someone, and then Perry, and I don't remember the someone. But I'd say I'm probably, I don't know, I'm maybe 50-50. There's been 3 picks the last 5 or 6 years where after they made them, I wasn't too thrilled. One was A.J. Green. I clearly blew that one. I was a huge Patrick Peterson guy, so But yeah, obviously AJ Green worked out. So I was way wrong on that. The other one was Cedric Ogbuehi. That was the second one. I'm like, man, I was just very beside myself on that one. And I think this is the third one. So we'll see if I am just totally have no clue what I'm talking about, or I hope so. I hope this turns out to be a great pick.
Connor, I know you got to bounce out and do some other stuff real quick. Where do you see the Bengals going tomorrow night? Any specific names you have in mind for tomorrow night for the Bengals?
I hope it's a running back or an edge. Oh, I personally hope it's an edge rusher, but if it's not an edge rusher, I hope it's a running back. But I think that it should be someone in the front seven, preferably edge rusher.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and to be honest with you, I know we're closing up, but if the Bengals truly want Joe Mixon, like a lot of people think they do, and I think they do, we might look at something towards the end of the first round here. I don't want to say the Bengals would trade up for a troubled guy like that, but it wouldn't be completely off the table in my opinion. But Mixon Watch 2017 is on, even though they went offense in the first round. I think the Bengals probably go Mixon, especially if he's there in the early second round. I think they love him. And even with all of his red flags, I think they love him. And then all of a sudden that offense becomes very dynamic. And then probably in the third round, they look edge rusher, linebacker, that sort of thing. But we'll see. I do think that the Bengals can vastly improve themselves again tomorrow night. We like the Ross pick. We're not necessarily in love with it, but we like it. And I think we can all agree to some extent this pick makes sense. Guys, thanks for joining us. We had a slew of live viewers tonight. Thank you so much for tuning into our live draft show. Personally speaking, I'm glad the Bengals didn't trade back because that would have made this show very long. But we appreciate the live viewers, all of the interaction in the chat room, all of the readers at Cincy Jungle that read our stuff. There's going to be a ton of content, be it breaking news, trades, all of that stuff on Cincy Jungle. So keep it there. Keep your eyes there. We'll be doing some Facebook Live stuff. Connor actually jumped off just to do one. So if you also read Cincy Jungle's material and you subscribe to their Facebook page, check out your Facebook feed because Connor will be there talking about the pick, all of that. We'll be back next week at our normal time and slate, talking about the entire new class of Bengals that will be coming in this year. We appreciate you guys dealing with us. I know we've been a little distracted. It's been kind of a chaotic first half of the first round. We've been trying to deal with it, but we appreciate it. Scott, thanks for making time and tuning in. I know you might lose a little sleep tonight about the John Ross pick, but try and relax, as Aaron Rodgers says.
You had mentioned something earlier about, which was in one of the posts I had that I posted this morning about the John Ross pick, how I thought it might be an inevitability based on how much they seem to love Will Fuller. So I will say I'd much rather have John Ross at 9 than Will Fuller at 24. So that much, between the two options that the Bengals were looking at, they pretty much were dead set. We want a small speed receiver. I think they definitely got the better one this year as opposed to.
I agree. I fully agree.
Mighty got.
Yeah, I fully agree. If you were to tell me Will Allen in the early 20s last year or John Ross top 10 this year, I would most definitely take John Ross over Will Allen. Yeah. But thanks for coming on.
About Boyd.
What's that?
It makes, granted, obviously you don't know the future, but if they knew they were getting Ross this year at 9, it makes you wonder, would they have grabbed Boyd, even though he was a good value pick.
Yeah.
Would they have grabbed him in the second round?
Yeah, and I think like we said, this might have been a little bit of a makeup from last year, and obviously a decision that was predicated on the fact that they lost 2 wide receivers last offseason that were very valuable to what they did on offense and very productive guys, and have since gone on and be productive to the teams they signed free agency contracts with. So. Obviously they lost 2 good players. They've drafted over the past 2 seasons 2 guys that they think could be 2 very good players and do similar things to Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones. So We'll see if that takes place. And, Bengals take John Ross at number 9. They've got 2 more picks tomorrow night and a slew of other picks over day 3 of the draft. And we'll see if they use some of those 11 picks to maneuver around and get, like I said, more of the quality over quantity for this roster. We'll see. Scott, thanks for tuning in and joining us. Thanks to the live viewers. Check out our content on Cincy Jungle, on YouTube, on SoundCloud, on iTunes. It's all there. You can also get in touch with the show at Bengals OBI or the obinsider@gmail.com. And, let us know what you think of the show. And if you want us to do this draft show again next year, we would love to hear that from you. So let us know. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Scott. Thanks to Connor. And enjoy the rest of your draft weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night, the rest of your weekend. Be safe, and we'll talk to you next week.